What's up, guys? I know it's been a while, but we are finally back for episode 3 of Scourge of War, Jours. So, in the last video, we took a look at the divisional scenario that just preceded this battle that we're going to play today, where we basically defended the town of Souffelweyersheim and the river line in front of it. So this scenario we're playing today is called the Heroes of Strasbourg. It takes place kind of right after that last scenario we played in episode 2 ends. Um, and the French have been pushed back out of the town and are making a stand on that big hill that we had all that artillery lining south of the town. The Austrians have pushed across the river, taken possession of Souffelweyersheim, and are preparing to push towards the hill. Uh, so in this scenario, we end up commanding the whole of the Army du Rhine, commanded by General Rapp, but we don't have it all right at the beginning. So at the beginning, the 16th Division and the 7th Cavalry Division are locked out to us. We can't use them. The only division we have is the 15th Division, the same division we played in the last video. Um, so the scenario lasts 2 hours. We will eventually command the whole of the Army de Rhine, which is really just a corps. I think it's the 5th Corps. It starts at 5 p.m., June 28th, 1815. It's considered a veteran difficulty scenario. Um, uh, it is a little tricky at the outset, but it's not really as difficult as the difficulty makes it sound. It's a lot like the beginning reminds me a lot of Picton's Rascals from the Quatre Bras expansion, and just in that you're the enemy starts out kind of right in your face, and you're just immediately attacked, and you don't have a chance to set anything up. So in that regard, it kind of reminds me of Picton's Rascals, which is kind of a very similar situation. Um, so the situation is general. A terrible battle is taking place around the village of Souffelweyersheim. We could not retake the village, but we stopped the enemy advance south. It is important to both hold the hill south of South Souffelweyersheim and the stone bridge. So there's that big hill that was south of the town, and there was that little stone bridge area that we had an objective at in the last video, but nobody really attacked it, so we were just basically getting points from it. So that same stone bridge is a factor in this battle, and our mission is to hold the hill south of Souffelweyersheim and avoid the enemy passing south of the stone bridge. Um, Spoiler alert: we can't really do that. We don't have much over there, and we really don't have any because we only have the 15th Division to start with. All that's really over there is like one battalion and like an artillery battery. That's really all that's there at the Stone Bridge, and the enemy is right in our face over at Souffelweyersheim. So we really can't pull any troops from the 15th Division to go and protect the Stone Bridge. But the scenario is written that way. The scenario kind of they're supposed to the enemy is supposed to actually capture the stone bridge. If they don't, you actually can't. I don't think you can gain command of the rest of the corps because the enemy actually has to capture an objective that's only for them. It's not for us. It's like a waypoint objective for the Austrians, and they have to capture it after taking the stone bridge. For the rest of our corps to unlock. So we want to like delay them as much as we can just to waste time and run the clock down. But ultimately, for us to gain control of the rest of the corps, we kind of need them to take that stone bridge. Beyond that, it's a very defensive situation, and it's just kind of back to basics: controlling distance, using skirmishers to stall the enemy from advancing on your position as quickly as they want, and just trying to set up a defense before they can really bring a lot of forces to bear on you. So yeah, a lot of it at the beginning. The beginning is fast paced, and I did play through the scenario a couple of times to work out what I think anyway is the best way to do this. I'm not claiming one way or the other that it's the absolute best way to do this, because I would have to play the scenario many, many times to actually come to that conclusion. Like the scenarios in the main game, in the expansions that I covered in the main series, I had played those all many, many, many times. I absolutely know those are the best ways to beat those scenarios. But this expansion is still relatively new. I'm not playing the game as much as I used to, a year ago, 2 years ago. So I've only played. I only played the scenario all the way through once, and that was when I recorded this video. But I played the opening, like 1 or 2 times just to get a feel for it and figure out kind of what the best way to get this defense going was. So again, it's very back to basics. It's just getting your skirmishers out there, controlling the distance, stopping the enemy advance, and forcing them to deploy and engage your troops while further away than they would really like to, giving you time to make more sense of your defense. And then, as you start to slow the enemy down and get them to stop and engage you, you can build up your defense, in more of a way you would want it to be. Artillery is very effective in this scenario. The hill south of Souffelweyersheim was made for artillery. I mean, there's already 2 batteries up on top of it, as we know from the last episode, and it's really a strong, strong hill to defend. So that's going to basically be kind of the strong point of our defense. And really, we just have to delay the enemy enough so that we can really set our troops up around those guns to be able to hold them. So that's basically it. And why don't we get the video going here? So we need 3,500 points for a major victory. And this is all the stuff about General Rapp. You guys can pause and read it or look at it on your own game if you want. I'm not going to read it here. And again, Mitra is our scenario author. It seems like he wrote all the scenarios for this. And so far, I think he's done an amazing job because they've all been pretty fun. And this one was no exception. All right, so we are General Rapp here, and while we do command the entire corps, we don't have all the troops under our command as of yet. So the first thing we're going to do is just take command of all leaders, and you can see all these enemy troops out in front of us here, and we're just going to take this unit here, put them in skirmish formation, not even split off skirmishers, it's a little unit. We'll put them in skirmish formation, and all right, let me read this. General Rapp, the enemy is pressing with all his force against my division south of Souffelweyersheim. We're keeping them in check thanks to the high ground south of the village. A battery and one of my battalions are holding the Stone Bridge area, and that is from General Rothenberg, who commands the 15th Division of the Army du Rhine, however it's pronounced. So, the first thing we're going to do is pull our big lines back and get them back by the guns. We want to lure the enemy towards the guns. But we need to slow them down. So the first thing we're going to do is, kick off some skirmishers real quick. We got to make this quick because they're approaching right now and they're right there. So this isn't going to be any kind of like beautiful, amazing defense. We're just putting skirmishers out to make them deploy and go into line and slow things down a little bit. And these big line units, 400 men, 500 men, we got to get them over by the guns because the guns are the strong point of this defense, so we have to protect them. So here's another little unit, 110 men. I want to bring them up in here and put them between the guns, and then later on we'll just deploy them into a long skirmish line to cover the batteries. Again, at the beginning here, I'm only doing what I absolutely need to do to stop the Austrians from advancing momentarily. Just get some skirmishers out there and force them to stop and go online and deploy. And you can hear our guns have opened up, and they're advancing down this road too. Again, we're just going to kick out a couple of skirmisher units, block their route of approach. Just real quick here. You can see we have some more Württemberg troops, I guess, approaching from the east over here. So we're going to line as much of this riverbank as we can quickly with skirmishers. Get some skirmishers in these woods here. All right, so we're forcing the Austrians to deploy and go online and engage our skirmisher. That's buying us time to finesse this defense back on the hill a little bit. And that's basically the plan right now. You know, my bigger line units, I'm just bringing them back by the guns, both to preserve them, and so we have more sources of skirmishers. I don't have that many out there right now, just enough to kind of stop the Austrians and make them engage. So, all right, our skirmishers are engaging. They're doing pretty good so far. The Austrians are just now setting up in line. They haven't even really started shooting yet. We'll start kicking off some more skirmishers here, and just because they're advancing on our left flank here, we'll get another skirmisher unit out there. Just quickly getting units out front to stop the Austrian advance here. And you know, we got to bounce over to this stone bridge because there actually are troops approaching it. We got to quickly split this whole unit up into skirmishers and line the riverbank. This position's going to get overrun. There's no sense in getting this battery overrun as well, so we're just going to get them the heck out of there. They'll be much better use later on back by the Souffelweyersheim hill here. Now, I know I'm going at a quick pace here and doing everything very rapidly. I did work some of this out ahead of time. Like I said, I played the opening, you know, half hour or so of the scenario a couple of times, just so I could kind of figure out what the best way to do this, what units to move first, what actions to take first, what defenses to set up first. You know, so this is kind of I guess we're a little pre-thought out. You know, it's not as blind as I played the other two scenarios. The other two scenarios gave me a lot more time to kind of set up my defense. So I didn't really necessarily need to play through it to get an idea of what to do, just because I had so much time to set up my defense that even playing the scenario blind, I kind of had a good idea of what to do and enough time to do it. But here, as you can see, the Austrians are all over the place, in our face. And so yeah, I ran through the first half hour, you know, a couple of times, just to kind of establish what I thought was the best way to get this set up. So over here by the right side of the river, we're just kind of trying to slow down the Austrians from making it across the river. You can see they are coming across. It's tough to just really defend this part of the river because we'd be giving our backs to these units right here. So we really can't, but we're doing what we can. Our skirmishers are doing good. Skirmishers always do excellent against line units. And just finessing the position a little bit, just, you know, getting these units kind of even with the guns. Protect the guns, always got to protect the guns. All right, so now I'm going to take this small unit. They're only 110 men, but because they're a battalion, they'll still cover a wider front than a normal 100-man skirmisher group, and we're just going to put them in skirmish formation. The next thing, we're going to bring the we're going to bring the supply wagons. We have 2 of them, and we're going to bring 1 behind each battery. Just to keep the guns in ammo. So all our skirmishers are doing excellent here. Yeah, they're not like inflicting a lot of losses or anything, but well, this unit's not getting the best of it here. They have 2 big battalions firing at them. We did move them into the woods though, so hopefully that defensive terrain benefit will start to kick in on them. So I'm quickly just making sure everyone's doing all right here. The main point here is not that they're inflicting a lot of losses, they're really not, but they are stopping the Austrians from just closing on this hill as quickly as possible, which is really what we're trying to do here. So we're going to bring Rothenberg, our division commander. We're going to bring him up to take command of the objective, and we're going to take General Rapp and actually send him back to a village behind us that will become an objective later on. This is the only objective right now, this one right in front of us, but 3 more will appear on 3 separate villages behind us. That's one of them right there. And then there's 2 more. There's another one. That one also becomes an objective. And then there's 1 more further south down the road. And all 3 of these become objectives. So we're just going to send Rapp here into the fort where the objective will appear. We will use this battery later on, but they're part of the cavalry, and we don't have command of the cavalry right now. So you can see a lot of our other troops are just spread out all over the field, and we only control the 15th Division right now. I'm just advancing that unit into to get the defensive terrain bonus. Get all those guys in the heavy woods. I mean, they'll hold the infantry, but the Austrians are bringing cavalry up, and what are skirmishers going to do against cavalry? Nothing. Which is why I'm getting that gun battery out of there, because skirmishers cannot really protect them, and they'll prove much more beneficial back here later on. So I'm just going to extend the artillery line kind of to the left of the hill here. Just make sure I don't have the guns placed badly. That looks pretty good. And here they come. And I'll move this unit off to the other side of the battery here. Which is kind of something I typically do with artillery. I will put them in the center and then put units on either side of them, whether I put them in line or I put them in square. You know, it's all variations based on a theme. Now, as long as the Austrians are content to stand here and shoot it out with us, our skirmishers are going to do really good. The other thing I noticed is a lot of these skirmisher units, look at the ammo. They have a lot more ammo if you look when that disappears. A lot of them have, like, the normal complement is like 40, but some of these units are, 50 rounds. I saw some of them have like 100 rounds. Like, a lot of these units have a lot of ammo. So there doesn't really seem to be anything coming at us down the road. So I'm just sending the skirmish unit I had blocking that road, just sending them off to the right where there's actual enemies to engage. And as soon as this all gets in deployed, we can see what it looks like and start finessing that position. Now the AI is playing it awful timid here. They have a lot of troops out there, and there's no reason why they couldn't form up in assault column and just barrel through all this, no problem, lickety split. It's something I've kind of noticed with both this scenario and the previous one is that the Austrians are just not that aggressive, and I'm not sure if that's like part of the way the scenario was written. Maybe Austrians didn't like to charge. Maybe they liked to shoot it out. But one thing I've definitely noticed is it's real easy to just stop these forces up just by putting something in front of them for them to shoot at, and they'll stop and shoot at it. And it wouldn't necessarily work against ally like the British or the Prussians, or it would, but it wouldn't work for as long. But these Austrians seem awfully timid. Like if I was commanding the Austrians here, I'd have had this hill already. So, all right, as you can see, at least a whole Austrian brigade or regiment, I'm not sure what they call them from the Austrian side, is advancing on our position here with some artillery. The artillery, of course, when they come within engaged distance, will turn around, as the AI always does. They're not just going to set up in shooting range of skirmishers. And again, the Austrian infantry is relatively timid here. Will approach, they will set up in line, and they will start shooting at skirmishers across a river in heavy woods. It's a very defensible position if you're just fighting infantry. So here's Rothenburg. Now these objectives aren't worth a whole heck of a lot. I think you got to hold it for like 5 minutes is the cycle. We'll see right here. Yeah, so it's a 5-minute cycle, and I think it's 100 points every 5 minutes. So it doesn't actually add up to a lot. It starts adding up more once all these other objectives south of us along the 3 villages unlock, and we can occupy them, and then it'll start adding up. But it's not worth a whole heck of a lot here. So we're primarily getting our damage right now from artillery bombardment. So I haven't lured these units quite close enough to use a lot of canister fire. I've heard a round or two go off, like right there, but they're not. Most of what we're doing is shelling them at the moment. But even at short to mid-range like this, you're going to get hits with shells, and your batteries will still build up a large score over time. Not as fast as if we were just peppering them with canister the whole time, but it will happen, and we are hitting some canister shots here and there. So these skirmishers are doing excellent. They're only taking 1 loss. They've inflicted 90. And I'm backing them up a little bit, both because, like I've said before, skirmishers have a bit of a sweet spot. You don't want them to be that close. They'll start taking more casualties. And 2, I notice that I'm hearing some canister, so I'm actually trying to lure the enemy infantry a little bit closer and see if we can make that canister become a little bit more regular. So as you can see, the Austrian artillery is just back here and back behind the river, where they're doing absolutely no good at all. Whereas we're trying to lure the enemy as close to our guns as we can get them. Just take a quick look, see what's going on over here. So we're duking it out with some skirmishers and a line unit over here. Dropped one of our men right here. But other than that, we're doing pretty good. I'm just going to wheel the skirmisher unit to face the line unit a little more. So yeah, there's a lot to watch in this scenario over kind of a wide area. So especially at the beginning, I would, trust your defense, trust your skirmishers, because the Austrians really just aren't that aggressive, and none of the times that I've played through the opening of this battle have I really seen them get that aggressive. So I'm sort of trusting the defense and trusting the fact that my skirmishers will hold these line units at bay. And I'll pop back and forth, see what's going on. You can see our skirmishers over here are doing excellent. So yeah, they're all knocking the enemy down here. Again, not huge casualties, but they're not taking any, and they're slowing things down here. But here is where the game changer comes. We can see enemy cavalry approaching. Right now we have no answer to enemy cavalry. All we have are skirmishers, and that's like oats for the horses. But as you can see, we have nothing else to pull from. We cannot pull any of this away. We need everything we got going on over here. So really we're just delaying the enemy as much as we can over there. So clearly that front unit there that's running away has had a taste of the canister and doesn't much care for it. So this is Marshal Boulard, who is the commander of the artillery reserve, which comprises these two batteries here on the hill, and we're just pulling him back just so he doesn't get mixed in with all those other units right there, and I can spot him easily. I like to keep all my leaders kind of close by, but far enough back that I can spot them easily. So the enemy has kind of stalled a little bit. And we're going to try and lure them a little bit closer. So I'm going to pull these skirmisher units back in front of the line units and see if we can kind of entice the enemy to approach and come within canister range. Normally that wouldn't be too difficult to do, but as I said, these Austrians are a little timid. And I'm going to place another skirmisher unit in front of this line unit. And I'm pulling troops over from the right side of the line just because it doesn't appear to be as heavily pressed as this area could be. And while I'm getting those skirmishers in place, I'm leaving that big skirmisher unit out front. And we'll pull Furion back and get him behind the artillery battery. And I'm also just shifting this big skirmish unit, this 110-man skirmish unit, just over a little bit just to cover more of the guns. Alright, so now that we're in the heavy woods, we're doing a little better with this unit. As you can see, the fighting is sapping our fatigue rather quickly. Now, it may look like we're about to get into melee here, but this is a big unit. Their flag is over here, and the skirmish unit is over here, so that's a little bit of a kind of an optical illusion. Where the flag is what matters. So the units are actually nowhere near each other, despite the fact that their sprites are kind of walking through each other. And you can see big buildup of Austrian infantry and cavalry approaching this position here. And our job here is just to stop them up as long as possible. We can't hold this, you know, with cavalry approaching. You know, they're just going to run across and knock us out of the way like dominoes. But, you know, every little second runs the clock down. So here comes the enemy cavalry, and over to the left there is part of the 16th Division, one brigade of it. The 16th Division is widely scattered. One brigade is over there to the far left of us, and the other brigade is like way south on the map. And they're just going to be objective holders whenever we get control of them. So, alright, real quickly, I'm gonna go make a fridge run. I'll be right back, fellas. Alright guys, I'm back. So we're still holding up these Austrian and Württemberg troops on the other side of the river here. We've broken a couple of units on the left here. But as you can see, I guess, I don't know if this is Austrian cavalry or Württemberg cavalry, but whoever the heck they are charging across the river and knocking our skirmishers out of the way, like dominoes, as I said they would. And we're just going to let them do it, because despite the fact that skirmishers really can't do anything against cavalry, we're still making them use charges, we're still making them run across a river, which really saps out your fatigue. And the more charges we can make them waste now on an inconsequential position for us, the less effective that cavalry will be later on. You know, so I mean, just kind of be resigned to the fact that you can't hold this stone bridge position. And you're not really supposed to, because the Allies have this is right here. This is an Allied objective. We can't get this. It's just them, and you can see they've taken possession of it. So I think it's a 5-minute objective. If they hold it for 5 minutes, I think what it basically does is unlocks the rest of our core. So once this objective disappears, we should be able to gain control of the 1st Brigade of the 16th Division over here, as well as our Cavalry Division and the other Brigade of the 16th Division, which is way south on the map. So, not holding this bridge is kind of part of the scenario, The only problem is like, you have to wait for the Allies to actually, the Austrians, I'm sorry, God, Rob, who are you fighting here? The Austrians to actually like hold on to it, and the AI isn't always as diligent about holding on to objectives as I am. So they might miss a cycle or two, before they actually get it. You can hear our guns just ripping away there. One run right after the other. We do have a lot of guns in position. Which reminds me, got to keep them in ammo. And I just, walk the supply wagons behind the caissons. So it's getting real hard to lure these Austrian line units into canister range. They're actually sending out a lot of skirmishers to tangle with our skirmishers and not really coming within range of the guns. I mean, I can't say I blame them, but, that is part of attacking is, you have to take some losses to get the job done. So we could see a courier coming our way. That actually can't be a courier for us because we don't have any officers over there. So it must be an Austrian courier. Now the biggest problem the Austrians are facing over here is they're just being way too timid as far as not wanting to come within range of our guns. And of course their guns are all the way back, here, where they're doing no good at all. So, I mean, those are two big disadvantages they've got going on right now. Over here they're doing a lot better. Obviously they have cavalry. They've pushed our skirmisher line back. We're just going to keep standing in their way and basically forcing them to waste charges on skirmisher units. So, all right. So, Albert's 16th Division has been released to us now. We now have command of them. They're scripted to start moving kind of towards the west, but we're going to take over and kind of give them their own orders. So the trickiest part of this is the fact that right now the Austrian forces are kind of between the 16th Division over here and the main position on the hill here. So the Austrians are between us as they're crossing the stone bridge. So these skirmishers that I have set up in front of the cavalry are basically trying to delay the cavalry so that we can get Behrman's brigade here and slip them by that position to get them to the hill south of the town of Souffelweyersheim. So it's kind of you kind of have to anticipate how much space you're going to need to slip these troops by. And it's always better to err on the side of caution. So I send them out kind of far away from that position at first to see how quickly the cavalry is going to continue to push these skirmisher units back. And then, if it appears that they're really taking their time, then maybe I'll start cutting some distance out of it. But I certainly don't want the cavalry to try and run this infantry down, or worse, lock them into square, and I can't get them over to the hill where we need them. So this is definitely like one of the trickier parts of the scenario. It's just kind of figuring out how you're going to sideline these troops past the Austrian cavalry to get them to the hill position south of Souffelweyersheim. Because you can see the Austrian cavalry is right here. They're across the bridge, and there's nothing standing between them and us but some skirmisher units. And we have to get them over here. So we have finally lured a line unit within canister range. And there we go. And this is what we want. Alright, it says, a strong enemy column of infantry and cavalry broke through the position at the stone bridge and is marching south. We cannot hold any more the line of Souffel. The 16th Division and the 7th Cavalry Division are now marching from the west to the fortified village line protecting South Strasbourg. It is vital to protect this line until night. So these are the three objectives now that have opened up. And this is now what we're supposed to protect. However, I still have confidence that we can protect the hill. It hinges on getting Biermann's brigade from the 16th Division around this. Here they are right here. We need to get them over here before the cavalry can pass through. So that's basically what we're trying to do. Here's the gun battery. So we're almost there with the artillery. And we just have to, if we can get this is a big brigade, 3,000 men almost. No, that's the brigade down here. But the brigade up here is pretty big too. And if we can get them over, we can hold this position. We're doing a good job right now, but we need more troops over there once the enemy starts pushing across that stone bridge. Now, they're disorganized right now because they were tangling with skirmishers. They charged across the river. Their infantry is still across the other side of the river. So it will take some time. You know, as you can see, most of their infantry is still on the other side of the river. Some of our skirmisher units are still shooting at them that haven't been charged by the cavalry yet. So we can still make them waste some more time. But what we're really trying to do is get that one infantry brigade and that other artillery battery over to this area over here, because I believe we can still hold this. And then these other assorted units down here, we're going to have them go, and it's cavalry and an infantry brigade. And we're going to send a little bit of each to the different towns to cover the objectives. And then that takes a while because we couldn't just send them to those towns right at the beginning of the scenario because those units were locked to us. So it's not like we could have just sent them and had them be ready when the objectives appear. It doesn't work that way with the scenario. You can only start moving them once they're released to you. So our guns are going across the danger zone right now. Our infantry is still basically sort of cut off right now. And we have to get them past this Austrian cavalry so that they can link up with the hill at Souffelweyersheim and make that the strong point of our defense. Now, our artillery is really paying it risky right here because here's the skirmisher units. The cavalry is right behind them, and we're just trying to like sneak through and get to the hill over here. Before the enemy can get themselves in order and push across the river. grab the supply wagon, make sure they just go to, they don't, they'll move pretty quick regardless of whether they're on roads or, we'll have them use roads for now, but we'll take them off roads when they get close enough that we can just hit them directly behind the hill. And I'm just setting a position for Bierman's brigade. Just trying to get them all moving. Because you could see there's the enemy cavalry, and there's nothing between them but skirmishers. Fortunately, they're concentrating on clearing the skirmishers from the river line so that the infantry can cross, and not necessarily paying a lot of attention to the skirmishers they've already pushed back. That's good. That should give us the time we need to sneak these guns past them. The infantry might be a little trickier because they're much further behind. As you can see, the lead units are kind of just coming into view over there, and a lot of cavalry has made it across this river. So our skirmishers are still continuing to hold these rather timid Austrian line units at bay here. And we're also bombing away on them with artillery at pretty close range. I mean, they're not in canister range, but they're close enough that they're definitely getting a lot of hits on these units out here. And they're up on a hill. They're in a really good position. So constant canister range isn't... I mean, it's always good, don't get me wrong, but it's not like critical. So here comes the 16th Division commander, Albert, and I'm just bringing him over to the area. So the cavalry is now starting to push against the skirmisher units they had previously attacked. I'm just going to let them stand there and get run off. We're still making them use their charges, use their fatigues. Just basically making them waste their resources on skirmishers. It'll buy us time. These guns are starting to move kind of past this position. They're not out of danger yet, but they're making progress. And here comes the battery commander, who took a rather roundabout route. So now I'm going to be assigning the battery a position over west of the hill. Not their final position, I'm just giving them somewhere to keep moving. So we're intercepting courier messages now from the troops over that are getting pounded by the south of the town there. So again, our skirmishers are withdrawing, but their cavalry has pulled back to the river as well. And between all that running, they probably used up a lot of fatigue, and they got to sit tight for a few minutes before they can build up enough fatigue to charge again. And the guns are starting to really make it past this position now. It looks like they'll be okay. The infantry is still way far behind, and they, I'm also sending them further south before I try and send them east, because just of how close the cavalry is, and the fact that infantry doesn't move nearly as fast. And we're continuing to intercept courier messages here. These skirmisher units are getting exhausted. They're doing amazing, but because they have so much ammo, we can just kind of leave them in position. So their fatigue is going lower than I would normally ever let skirmishers' fatigue go. But I think what we're going to do here is kick out a fresh skirmisher unit to take this unit's place. Now, I don't immediately recall that skirmisher unit that's already there because I want the skirmisher unit I just split off to come up. And plus, I'm keeping an eye on a lot of stuff right now, going back and forth between this stone bridge area and monitoring what's going on back at the hill. So again, they're continuing to push our skirmishers back. Just oats feeding the horses over there. But they, you know, we're making them waste charges, making them waste time, making them waste fatigue. You know, all in the name of being able to get this artillery battery and this brigade over to this area where we can set up a much stronger defense. So I'm advancing these line units now and putting them in square. Basically setting up, converting into the infantry cavalry version of the fortress. Because these units appear to not be too interested in fighting, but with all that cavalry approaching on our left, I want to be ready as we start extending this line. By setting up more combined arms defenses. So we still have our skirmishers out front screening the squares if the line units do approach, but we have the squares if the cavalry starts coming within range of us. And I'm just giving Boorman's brigade a new place to move to. They're starting to, you know, they're pretty far south now. They're starting to come up on this position. If the skirmishers can hold a little bit longer, we should be able to get this infantry brigade over here. And okay, we have a cavalry brigade approaching this position. Now, cavalry can't occupy forts, but this is a small area, so I'm thinking maybe I can occupy this objective with cavalry if I can just get them kind of in kind of the right area around this objective. Maybe I can be close enough to trigger it. It takes a little experimentation. At this point now, we're kind of past any of the points I had played through previously. Generally, I'd only played about the first like 30 minutes or so just to get an idea of how to set up. So now we're going into kind of uncharted territory as far as playing this scenario goes. So, you know, you'll see me do some things that I'm just not quite sure what I'm doing because I haven't encountered it yet as far as trying to get these objectives occupied. So I want to try and do like the same thing here. We need 300 men to occupy these objectives, so I'm taking 3 of these cavalry squadrons and see if, because I already have RAP in this little building down here. So if I can get 300 troops within range of the objective, maybe I can get this objective occupied as well. I don't think it works over here. The objective is just kind of like too far in there, and it's considered a garrison, so I can't get cavalry in there. So we have triggered the objective over here, but I think we lose it. I think like one of these battalions is not kind of placed right, and I'll have to finagle it a little bit. So you can see one of our infantry columns has stopped. Because I don't have it on TC. and it was reacting to cavalry being too close to it. So I'm just going to take command of it, force it to move, catch up with the rest of the infantry brigade, because the cavalry is a little, they're continuing to focus on my skirmishers, which is what I want. I want them to waste these charges, waste this fatigue, and buy us the time to get the troops over here. So these troops are beginning to advance on the center, and we're just still trying to sneak this infantry brigade around the cavalry so we can set them up over here. And I'm just resetting their position because of that one infantry battalion that I had on TC. I took them off TC because they're far enough away from the cavalry now. And now what I've done is selected their position, and now I just TC'd them all so they won't stop like that. So I do have these units in square now, but we have skirmishers out in front to screen them so that if the infantry tries to engage, the squares will be relatively protected. As they come within range, these guns should switch to canister and make them pay a heavy price for trying to approach us. I'm going to strip this unit over from the right, only because the right seems very secure right now. And now we have command of this battery, so I'm going to bring up a battery over here and set them up in here. And we'll try and get a unit here and a unit here, something to that effect. And that will pretty much lock down that side of the line, hopefully. So, all right, our infantry is slowly but surely making its way around. Oh, we really should be switching to canister on these guys. Let them have it. They're getting close. And, all right, the cavalry is pulling back again. So I'm just going to reposition Boyman's brigade, just bring them. They don't need to be this far over to the left. We're going to extend the line at this point, so they don't need to come that far over. And as you can see now, these guys are taking some canister fire. They're close enough. The guns are screened by the skirmisher unit. They shouldn't stand there for long. Boom. And as you can see, the guns are really racking up a lot of points for us. And these guys are in hedgerows. I know it doesn't look it, but the flag is in hedgerows, so they get it. Ugh, these guys are pooped. You know, but they still got 73 rounds of ammo and the morale's high, so... Alright, so now I can recall the skirmisher unit that I sent these guys up to replace. And yeah, they're actually part of this unit, so we can actually pull this whole line unit back and just put them in line and let them rest. And we'll split off another skirmisher unit from these guys to take their place as well. So like I said, real timid. You know, they have a whole line of infantry set up there, and they're just content to like shoot it out with skirmishers, which is just never going to work. You know, not unless you kick out your own skirmishers and then come up behind them. But we're also pelting this unit with canister now. That's going to hurt. So we're just reconfiguring our line, our skirmisher line over here. Get a new line in the center right here. And these are all pretty fresh units now. They should be able to hold for a while. And we're continuing to rake this line here with grape shot. And here comes another line unit. And both of these guys are, you can see shells exploding overhead and canister ripping into them. Just not a good place to be. So, alright, the cavalry has kind of stalled out there, and our brigade has almost made it through. We can see that some Austrians are crossing the river down here. Their guns are starting to come into view. They're slowly starting to push their infantry across the river now. Decking these guys with canister, just like that. And we'll run our supply wagon back and forth. Well, I'm going over to check this objective, and you can see it's not really working. Like, I can't get my cavalry into the building, so I can't get them close enough to the objective to actually be considered covering it. I was hoping maybe if I could try it, maybe I'll get them on this side and try it. Like, I'm just experimenting. Like, all I have is cavalry over here right now, and I'd like to cover this objective. So I'm just seeing if I can make it happen. You can hear that canister in the background still just ripping away. Such a strong position, that hill. And I've also lost these guys now. I've lost this objective, so I gotta see if I can tweak this. So what I'm gonna do is just put the leader in the building and then click a formation and see if the units will form up really close around the objective and see if we can trigger it. This garrison building is much smaller than the first one on the first village, so maybe we can get the units close enough to make it happen. So here comes, once these troops get down, we'll be able to cover those objectives a little better. So alright, Boyman's brigade is moving into position here. Now we can really start to strengthen this line. Take one of these units, put them in square, close up the other side of this fortress. Yeah, I was grabbing a squadron like an idiot. I halted them. We'll have to go back and see. I was still clicked on that squadron from the town back there. So here we go. Now we got the battalion. Put them in square. Close up the fortress. I'm going to send a couple of units out on the right just because now I've split off a lot of skirmishers and I don't have too many big line units over there. These units have actually routed towards my line. At first I'm like, whoa, am I being charged? But I'm not. They're routed. They're just going to surrender as soon as they make contact with my troops. Those are the two units that were eating all that canister fire, and they're done. They're done. That's what canister will do. On top of that, they routed the wrong way. So alright, we got a lot more battalions to play around with here and really strengthen up this side of the line. Having those two line units surrender was certainly welcome. So one of these units I'm going to bring over here just to put on the opposite side of this horse battery that I'm bringing up. And we'll put a unit in line behind the gun battery to be the source of skirmishers. And we have a couple other units to play with. And just because right now everything's going on off my extreme left here, I'm just going to put like a square here and like maybe a square here just to cover my flank, because it's all cavalry out there right now. And I don't want them trying to run around my my left flank and be able to get through to my rear. So I'm just going to guard my extreme left with some squares for now, because I don't really have any other use for them at the moment. And just put a square out here too. We still got one more unit to play with, and I think I'll put them in the center, just because there's not much in the real center here, but a skirmisher unit. So just to have some, whether I need more skirmishers or I need some muscle, at least I have a big line unit in the area here. So while that's happening, we're intercepting more courier messages. And as you can see, it's not working here either. So this cavalry is just not going to work as far as covering this objective goes. So we're going to have to wait until we can get some infantry up. But the infantry, the only other infantry brigade we have is like way south, and they have a long road to go. So yeah, just desperation here. I know full well you can't put cavalry in a garrison, but some part of me was hoping that it wasn't really a garrison, but it is. And yeah, I cannot get my units in there. There's nothing I can do here. I cannot occupy this objective with cavalry. And yeah, that really irritates me because, okay, so we've at least gotten this one now. We managed to finagle these units to get them close enough to the objective. So all right, there's all the enemy cavalry. So we've got a square out front here. We've got the left square of the fortress protecting the guns, and then we've got another square on our extreme left to deter the cavalry. So now, pretty routine. From the rear unit, we're just going to kick off skirmishers. Screen the square, screen the guns, screen the other square, just like you've seen me do a million times. So it looks like the enemy cavalry is kind of waiting for the infantry to come up, which is probably a good idea for them. They've used a lot of their fatigue, a lot of their charges. They at least can recover some fatigue and be useful again while they're waiting for their infantry to cross the river and get themselves together. But it's also buying us precious time to get all of this set up. Now it looks like the enemy forces are actually moving eastwards along the riverbank here to maybe come forward and engage us over here, which just happens to be perfect because that's where we're setting up. And these squares out here are basically just out here guarding against the cavalry. So here we go. We got a line unit here set up, ready to engage our skirmishers. We've got our horse battery over here now. They've unlimbered, and they're going to start going to work. And because these guys are being pretty timid, I'm actually going to take the small units and put them on either side, and we'll take the line unit, the big line unit back coming over. Put them behind here, and they'll be the source of skirmishers. And all of these units are pretty fresh. Looks like one of the Wartenberg units has kind of made it across the river here, but they don't look to be causing too much of a problem. And I'm actually pulling this little square back and putting a bigger 500-man unit out there in square, because that way I can kind of cover both this battery and the one on the other side. So it looks like the cavalry has recovered some, and maybe they're moving forward and getting ready to push these skirmishers off. And what do we have here? Look at this. We have the other cavalry brigade that I completely forgot about. And they're close enough that we can actually bring them up and they can be useful to us. So we're going to just bring them up behind the lines right here. Figure out what we're going to do with them later, but just, I know it's good to have some cavalry, especially with all that enemy cavalry out there. So we're just going to bring them up in here and have them nearby and see how things play out. I don't normally like to use cavalry as a offensive weapon in terms of using them for the charge. I generally like to use them just to have them nearby. Enemy units come too close, I can use the cavalry to force the enemy units into square, keep them in square. I can screen the cavalry with skirmishers to protect them, and just stuff like that. So I realize now that I got one. This is the other brigade, Cardinal's brigade of the 16th Division, and I need them to go to two different villages. The one up front that the cavalry can't occupy, and then the one I have them originally sent to occupy, which was down here to the south. So I'm going to split this brigade. I'm going to send half of it to this village and half of it to this village, to the southern village. So Cardinal, with a couple of battalions, he will head to the northern village, and then I split off I split the brigade, so now I have another commander to play with, and we'll send him south to occupy the other town. Our skirmishers are actually recovering a little bit because the cavalry is leaving them alone at the moment, probably because the cavalry is probably pretty gassed. So our skirmishers are recovering somewhat, so we may be able to use them a little later on, but right now they're still much more important as far as just giving the cavalry something to waste charges on if they want to come forward. So here we go. We have a line unit in basically the skirmisher source position, and we're just going to start splitting them off. Screen the units up front, screen the guns. I realize I already have a skirmisher line kind of ahead of them, kind of providing that same function, but that's just something I always do. There's really no reason not to. and plop them down in front of the other battalion. So now we got an infantry fortress set up behind our main skirmisher line. So this position is now really, really strong. Over here we got a couple of combined arms fortresses, and then we just have a couple of squares on our extreme left, just guarding in case the cavalry tries to come around and get behind us. So the Austrians really wasted a lot of their strength, man. They sat there and shot it out with us for too long. And I mean, they still have a lot of men out there, but now those units are probably not in great shape. They probably can't charge. You can see them pulling back. They've lost a lot of men. I mean, our artillery reserve alone has gotten, our division alone has gotten 2,300 points. Just the 15th division. Alright, so here's Cardinaux, and he's going to head north to occupy that objective that I can't occupy with the cavalry. And then we have Chef de Battalion Lamy, who is going to go and occupy this building here, so we can get this objective. There was probably a better way, quicker way to do that than what I did, but as I said, I'd really only run through the first 30 minutes of the scenario a couple of times, and kind of anything after that is just kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. So the cavalry is moving forward again, pushing our skirmishers back. So I got a little idea here. What I'm basically going to do is these skirmishers now are, this was all one unit I initially split, so I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute. I'm far enough away from the cavalry now. If I recall all these skirmisher units, this unit would be pretty decently sized again. Maybe I can just plop them in square on the road and stop the cavalry that way from going around my rear. So that's basically what I'm thinking right now. So I'm recalling all these skirmisher units and reassembling this unit, and you can see they're back up to 300 something men. You know, that's big enough to form a sizable square. And because it's only cavalry out there, one square ought to do it. And we'll just put them in square, back them up a little bit so that these units have, I guess we don't need to back them up that much. But what that'll allow me to do is bring that square I have way, yeah, there they come. And basically tighten up my extreme left here. So now I have two squares in close proximity, you know, with their kind of zones of control overlapping. So the Austrians looks like they've moved all their forces over here now. But this is a good position now. We have a front skirmisher line, a rear skirmisher line, and then an infantry fortress set up. So this would be pretty hard to approach. Lot of bodies on the ground. Mostly a stare down over here. So how's our horse battery doing, I wonder? So, okay, they've got 35 points. You know, they only came over a couple of minutes ago and just got set up, so. We can see our brigades, split brigade. One is moving north, one is moving south. And this is our cavalry officer who is lagging behind his men as they approach the line, so we're just going to double click him. And yeah, we're just bringing these guys up in rear of the line just in case we need them to, you know, force enemy line units into square or discourage enemy cavalry or kind of whatever we might need them for. So now the cavalry has completely turned around because there's a square blocking them and they can't do anything about it. That's all it takes. One square. So, though those skirmishers got charged over and over and over again, they wisely ran, and we were able to reassemble them and form them into square to protect our extreme left, or, you know, the route around our extreme left. And Rothenburg has got himself about 2,400 points. What do we need? 35 for a major victory. So, but that's just Rothenburg. You know, we'd have to actually click on RAP to see how many points we really have. And yeah. So obviously I cannot use this cavalry to occupy this objective, and I've got infantry coming up to do it. So we're just going to send this cavalry and send them over to the right part of our line so we have some squadrons there as well. And I'm just handily placed here with the camera to both grab them and, you know, send them over, but I'm not making any kind of precision placement with them yet. I just want to get them over in that area. So here comes Cardinau's, half of Cardinau's brigade, and he is now going to enter the garrison building here and take command of that objective. And the other half under Lamy is heading for this building to occupy this objective. And we're just going to double click him. These troops aren't going to have to fight. They're just objective occupiers, so who cares if they run out of breath, right? Work on your cardio game, boys. So yeah, with one square, we've turned all this cavalry around, and we've got a nice block of squares protecting our left, because they're still out there. The enemy infantry has crossed the river down here, but they're not making any move towards us yet. I can see their artillery back there, but it's way back there. Way back where it will do no good at all. And yeah, that's fine. They want to take their time, be slow. All that is just running the clock down and soaking up more points from the objectives. Not to mention our guns are still blazing away at whatever's out there. And trust me, they're getting hits. Alright, so we have the objective now. We have both of them. So we have the bottom town, which I guess is called Schiltingham, and let's click on wrap, and we can also see that we have nearly 5,000 points, 4,700 points, well over what we need for a major victory, and we now also possess the objective of Hohenheim. So the points are going to really start to add up now that we have 4 objectives under our command here. You can see they're blue, we have all of them. And here's our cavalry coming up. And again, I'm just bringing them up. Don't know what we're going to do with them yet, but they're just here in case we need them. We can see the cavalry is now starting to make its way forward again, more towards this position. But we're in pretty good position to meet them. You know, if they come more from this direction or this direction, I could always siphon some guns off individually and put them between 2 of those squares. We'll wait and see what it is they want to do. Looks like I forgot to cover this square with skirmishers. That's probably what I'm doing. Probably gonna put them right here. Yep. So here come all these. These are the couriers we keep intercepting. So what's probably happening is they're running out along this road and then hitting like this skirmisher unit and getting themselves killed. So the enemy cavalry is approaching this position. The infantry seems to have moved forward a little bit, but I don't know what they're planning. Move our cavalry a little further forward just to cut down on the response time. So yeah, right now it appears to just be the enemy cavalry moving forward, and well, that's beautiful. With some of these units that have skirmishers in front of them, maybe we can bait out a few charges, get them close enough to the guns to rip into them. So I'm going to start sidelining these guys over to the right. Clearly the cavalry has no intention of going around my left anymore, so we don't need to protect our that road the way we were before. And we got a few more cavalry squadrons coming up. We'll have them take position behind the fortress, and that will pretty much put an end to anything that could possibly happen over here. We're still continuing to intercept those courier messages. And I'm just backing this battery up a little bit, just get them a little higher up on the hill, because at this point these units are pretty far back. So if I can get them a little higher up on the hill, it'll give them better line of sight to bombard them. Obviously at this distance we're not going for canister anyway, so we might as well give them a better field of view. And yes, all four of the objectives are occupied. So the points should go up a lot quicker now, because now every 5 minutes it's going to be 400 points instead of 100 points. So the yeah, it looks like just the enemy cavalry is coming forward. No infantry. Oh, I do see an infantry battalion moving forward, but they're way back there. So these guys better be careful. They're gonna get rock paper scissors to death. I realize it's been a pretty successful day for you guys so far, but bear in mind all you did was run off some skirmishers. Now you're facing the real deal. I'm just closing in on the guns a little bit with these squares, just to overlap the zones of control, make absolutely sure that the cavalry cannot get through to the guns. So if you got to squeeze in on your gun battery a little bit, you can see I'm squeezed in on them here. That's okay. The gun battery, the guns will move around and find whatever they can to shoot at. The most important thing is that the cavalry just can't get through to the guns. So we are over 5,000 points now. As you can see, now the points are starting to climb pretty quickly. We're nearing 5,500 points. What a difference in casualties. Look at this. We've inflicted almost 3,000 casualties, and we've only taken like 160? What's that? Jesus. Oh, skirmishers are so good. Artillery is so good. I get away with so much BS in this game just because of the way I use skirmishers. Like, that's like probably 70% of what I get away with is just because of how I use skirmishers. So, boy, is this cavalry getting close. They're just, wow. Look at all that infantry out there. They've definitely all moved up into line here. Oh, they're just right outside the distance where I could be clipping them. It's like dangling a carrot in front of me, and it's just out of reach. Still not much going on the right here. It just looks like one battalion and a skirmisher unit. Nothing of consequence. These guys are pooped. These guys are alright. They're just chilling. Like I said, I don't really think there's much going on out here. I come over and look at it once in a while, but I have a feeling the real action is going to be on the left here in a few minutes. So right, we got squares, we got guns, we got cavalry, we got skirmishers, we got the whole kit and caboodle, ready to meet these guys. Now, I think this courier is gonna die like right around here. Yep, he's dead. He disappeared. Would have been nice if I held the camera so we could have seen it. So yeah, that's what's happening is we keep intercepting couriers. You can see there's like a couple of them out there. So we'll wait to see what they're going to do with this cavalry here. They're hanging out there just outside kind of the happy spot I want to be at. But I'm thinking I'm going to take a few guns and just individually move them over in between these two squares to cover kind of out here, and leave some here to cover here. You know, kind of get the whole field of fire, you know, everywhere in here. Just bring a few guns over into this spot right here. And as long as it's only cavalry, you know, the fact that these squares aren't like perfectly placed, you know, to be a fortress, doesn't really matter. They're still going to be in front of the guns. As long as the cavalry can't get through the guns, that's all that matters. Here comes another courier. I think he's probably going to drop too. Yep, there he goes. So we're just killing couriers. Every courier that comes down this road, we're just killing them with the skirmisher unit and intercepting the courier message. So now we've got a couple of guns out there between these two squares. This cavalry's just kind of sitting right outside, you know, the range I would like them to be at. Now maybe I can move the square up so I can move the guns up, maybe get into canister range. They're 225 yards away, or 230 yards, so it's like they're just outside canister range, but far enough outside that I don't think just inching forward is going to do it. We'll bring another gun over here. And now their infantry is moving. Now, where the heck is it going? Now it looks like their infantry is making for my extreme left. So we got to put the kibosh on that real quick. Luckily, we have a whole bunch of unused cavalry here. And as a temporary stopgap, we can just put them out there. They'll force them into square, stop them from moving. And then we can figure out what it is we're going to do. If we need to screen the cavalry, we can split off some skirmishers from that square. But yeah, I expected them to come forward and support the cavalry, or come forward and attack and have the cavalry support them. But no, they're heading off in another direction here. So our squadrons have made it over here, and I'm just going to plop them, you know, into the where I would normally put assault columns. You know, cavalry squadrons will do that job just fine as well, just a counter-charging force. And we'll put another one over here, just to have a cavalry squadron in the center. We got plenty of cavalry on our left here. And our guns are opening on the cavalry here. They're still hanging out, kind of just outside. And all right, one good thing about cavalry is it's very fast. So our two squadrons have made it here. They're now blocking this road around our rear, and any of these units that come forward will have to form square. And before this gets going, guys, I'm going to make another quick run to the fridge. I'll be right back. Alright guys, I am back. And the cavalry is still hanging out back there. Now I see some infantry approaching. So maybe things could get interesting. Looks like maybe some more cavalry back here. Definitely, that's an infantry battalion. We've got a lot of cavalry out here. But even with one infantry battalion, they can start to bring some kind of combined arms against us. So now they want to use skirmishes on our cavalry. But I could just move towards them and they'll have to run away. So what we want to do here is actually move the cavalry forward and force these line units into square. And once we do that, then we can screen the cavalry with skirmishers from our square. And basically then we get to use skirmishers on squares, which is great. So there's absolutely no reason for us to remain in square over here, facing infantry. As you can see, the first thing I'm doing is sending cavalry to get within engaged distance of these units, force them to form square, and just play the rock, paper, scissors game. I mean, that's what Napoleonic warfare really is, right, guys? Just a big game of rock, paper, scissors. So this is that battalion mass formation, which is basically like the Austrian version of the square. So it's like a square, but it's not hollow. It's like a densely packed rectangle of troops, but it's a square formation. It's meant to defend against cavalry. Whereas our squares are actual squares with an open inside. The Austrian one is just packed with troops. So right, the Austrian infantry has moved forward to engage our skirmishers. Now what the cavalry should do, is they have so much cavalry out here, is they should go ahead and spend one squadron to get my skirmishers out of there and that are in front of the square. So at least the line infantry unit can actually shoot up the square. And this line unit here is being rather stubborn about forming square. So we're going to have to incentivize them. There they go. And that's good enough. We'll halt them. And now we'll split off some skirmishers. Now, see, they just don't want to stay in square. The moment I move the cavalry out of range, they want to form line again. So we're going to have to keep the cavalry within engaged distance to force them into square. And we'll just cover them with skirmishers. Now, as long as these skirmishers are here, this line infantry is not really going to be able to damage the square. With all this cavalry out here, I think it's worth it to spend a squadron just to get them out of there. So, okay, now we have forced all these units into square, bring the skirmishers up, screen the squadron so that they can't get shot at, and we'll be able to shoot at the square with skirmishers, which of course is very good for skirmishers. So some of the cavalry is heading further east towards Souffelweyersheim here, and my center is a little squishy. No squares out in the center there. So if they move past here into here, they might have a route. They would definitely have a route through to the guns. So we need to get some squares out here. I don't have much to work with. A couple of small units, but as long as the infantry stays over here, that should be enough to hold this cavalry at bay. So these are tiny little units. Wow. 150 men, 120 men. Yeah, I don't have much left to work with because my line is starting to get spread a little thin here. So as you can see, the skirmishers are doing all the shooting, and my cavalry is safe behind them. And we'll put another skirmisher unit and just continue shooting at multiple sides of the square, be breaking them down. As long as this cavalry unit sits right here, they'll keep this unit in square and this unit in square. I do have some skirmishers shooting at me, but they're kind of far away. A lot of cavalry heading this way, so yeah, I need to get these squares out in the front here. So we're at 7,000 points, double what we need for a major victory. So yeah, those objectives are really coughing up the big points now. And this is what I would do. Spend the squadron. Yes, I'm just going to recall them, but you know what? You've gotten them out of there now. Now the square is defenseless against the line infantry shooting at them, and they'll quickly, you see, they haven't gotten hit at all yet, but now that they don't have skirmishers screening them, the casualties will start to add up. But the cavalry can't stay here, because now the guns can plop away at them. So it's going to become a little game of, well, how many times do you want to do this, guys? See, they're running off so they don't get pelted with canister. But you can see immediately we've already taken 6 casualties with this square. As soon as it's like dropping your shields, you know. So we're going to kick out some more skirmishers, screen the square, you know. And if the cavalry wants to keep challenging them, that's what we're going to make them do. Waste their charges on skirmishers. So yeah, they're already 12 losses, you know. Squares are incredibly vulnerable to line infantry if they're not screened by skirmishers. Oh, well, what do you know? They're breaking and running. They really had no option. They had to stay in square, and they were getting shot at by skirmishers. So now this unit has backed up a little bit and has formed a line, so we're going to advance this cavalry unit and see if we can force them back into square. And see if we can shoot these guys. So even though I don't have a lot to work with over here compared to what the Austrians have, it's all about the rock, paper, scissors. And again, go ahead, charge them, recall them. They lose their charge. Yes, our square is defenseless again, but we've made the cavalry waste yet another charge. And they'll have to run off. The guns are right here, and then we can just keep playing this game with them. Just keep putting the skirmishers out front, keep making them waste their charge. You know, the square's shooting at them right now. There goes the canister. They're not going to sit there and eat that for long. So yeah, we'll take a few extra casualties while our square is not screened here. But as soon as this cavalry retreats, we'll just bring them right back up. So, all right, now we have the cavalry has kind of moved into the town. It'll take them a while to get themselves oriented around that, but we have squares out front now. Yeah, so it's not necessarily that I have a lot to work with over here. It's just how I'm using it that makes it work. You know, if I can keep them all locked up in square, you know, and keep skirmishes out there. And here we go again. But no, there's squares here, fellas. That doesn't work. Can't charge the guns. The squares are here. So canister just ripping these unit up, and off they go. So now that they're gone, again, we'll just keep making them play this game. You want to get rid of my skirmishers. Every single time you're going to have to waste a cavalry charge to do it. I'll just keep putting them out there. You know, and now these units are close enough that we're peppering them with canister. My guns are a little far forward, so I'm going to move the square forward to, again, extend the zone of control so the cavalry has no chance of getting through. And again, we have the skirmishers in front of the cavalry. The cavalry keeps the units in square. The skirmishers screen the cavalry while being able to shoot at the square. So, again, it's just rock, paper, scissors, and it's all about how you do it. You know, that's why I was pretty sure we could hold this position, because I knew I was going to be able to bring all three arms to bear. And I wouldn't need to hold it with as much as, you know, anywhere near what they have out here. You know, it's not how many men you have, how many troops you have. It's really having all three arms and using them right. And using them in a way that just out rock, paper, scissors the enemy. Which isn't hard to do against the AI once you realize that they'll only ever come forward with two or three of the arms. I'm sorry, one or two of the arms. They'll always leave their guns like way back where they do no good. So that always gives us the advantage. We just have to know how to protect the guns and keep that advantage. So individually, I'm just starting to push some of these guns up further up into the square, see if we can start picking away at that line. These squares are basically blocking all this cavalry. They cannot get through to the guns. I'm just going to recall these skirmishers. It's just cavalry. There's no reason for them to be out there. I might bait a charge out of them, but, you know, it's something else I have to watch, and I'm more concerned with what's going on over here. So again, we've got our screen up. Shields are up, Captain. Our ship is safe. And again, you want to get rid of them, you got to do this. You got to waste your cavalry charges. Come forward, charge the skirmishers. I'll recall them. Oh, and that time I waited too long and they retreated. It doesn't matter. It's the same effect. So our guns are now blasting into this infantry. They're pulling back. So the square is going to get a reprieve anyway because there's no more infantry shooting at them. I just waited a little too long to recall them. I'm trying to lure the cavalry in as close as I possibly can. So sometimes I mistime the distance. But now this isn't going to work either, fellas. Square's closer. Guns are safe. Turn around. See, everything is distance management with this game. Control the distance and you control the game. It's really that simple. You know, the key factor here is that you cannot pick units to charge. You just have a generic charge button, and units charge whatever is closest to them. So that's what lets you control the distance, by putting things that they can't charge closest to them. So they can't charge anything because the squares are what's closer to them. Cavalry can't charge squares. It's just really simple distance management. So we're at nearly 8,000 points now, just cruising our way to a major victory here. We've inflicted almost 3,500 casualties. We've only taken 2.25. You know, a real slaughter here. The Emperor will be pleased, or he would be if it wasn't for the fact that he, you know, lost at Waterloo and his whole army is running back to Paris as we speak. But yeah, all this cavalry is just bottled up out there with nothing to do. So the infantry is heading back, so we're going to have to get those skirmishers out there again. Do a quick supply wagon run here. We should probably get these guys. Yeah, they've been shooting a while, and I haven't resupplied them. So same thing over here, we're just keeping these units bottled up in square. Got our skirmishers out. Screening the cavalry. And again, now that we were able to move these guns up into position, as soon as that infantry comes forward, we're dropping canister on them, and they can't even stand long enough to shoot up the square. So there they go. And that's their second time retreating, so they're near the end of their usefulness. And with them gone, the cavalry really can't do anything because there's just nothing but squares in front of them. Just like over here. They came over here, I'm sure they had something planned, but I plopped these squares in front of them, and that was it. It was over. There was nothing for them to do. Looks like they're trying to head even further east now. Now, if the cavalry charges this first line of skirmishers, I'll convert this into the cavalry, or the combined arms fortress. I'll form these units in square. I think I'm doing that right now, actually. Just advancing the skirmishers, and we'll put these guys in square. And it looks like the cavalry just has thought better of even bothering. So this is the skirmish unit that retreated. We'll just recall them. I think I'm recalling these guys too because there's no infantry anymore. So there's really no reason to have skirmishers out there. Other than if I was going to use them to bait a charge, but at this point that's just one more thing to watch. And now it seems like the fight is spreading over here a little bit. I'm actually low on ammo on some of these skirmish units, so I'm sending a supply wagon out here. See if I can re-up the skirmishers. These guns are still pasting this cavalry. So, okay, now we've got squares out front. Thin squares, but I don't think this is much of a threat out here. I mean, they're not even charging the skirmishers that they could run off. And, okay, we've resupplied one skirmisher unit. Let's see if we can just head over and get this other one. We've still got all these units locked up in square. And yeah, that's how I really like to use cavalry. Like, I'm not really a fan of the cavalry charge. I only do it in situations where, like, I absolutely have to. You know, it's like a matter of survival. But generally speaking, I stay away from the cavalry charge. Cavalry to me is much more useful for its part in the part it can play in the rock paper scissors game of just forcing units into square. I like to do that with them a lot more than, you know, kind of the mass charge. Yep, keep eating that canister, fellas. So, like, here is an example of a matter of survival. This cavalry is now barreling towards the skirmisher unit, or I think it's going to, or one of these, you know, is they're setting up on my flank here, and I really don't have anything to do. So I'm trying to get this unit into position to form a square and maybe block them. Now I've gotten these guys moving. I kind of crisscrossed them. I just want them to halt and stop moving. See if I can get these guys over here and form them into square, but they're not going to get there in time. Here comes the cavalry. So it's just a matter of survival. It's just, you know, I have nothing else to stop these guys right now, so I have to take the squadron and countercharge them. Again, that's not how I like to use cavalry. It's just nothing else I can do at the moment. Yeah, and they're coming. They're coming for sure. So I got to hit them. Now these are dragoons. I don't know what they're up against here, but my units get wrecked. Now yeah, my skirmishers are retreating, and you can see I'm just getting pulverized. My score is just, I haven't killed a single man. Like, I'm just getting wrecked. But the Austrians do pull back, so I got hammered in that melee, like just trashed. But, you know, I stopped them from penetrating. Now, boy, you guys kidding me? Withdraw. So I'm gonna make them retreat now, because now I got another square up here, so that'll effectively put the end of any more cavalry charges like that. So I just needed to buy some time to get that square into position. Now that this cavalry has retreated, these units are going to form line again. So I'm going to bring the cavalry back up to force those units into square again, so that they can't shoot up the squares I have out here. So their cavalry is withdrawing. We can bring my cavalry up, force these units into square, bring the skirmishers back up. Maybe we'll just bring this unit up and put them in skirmish formation. Yeah, they got 109 men. So we'll bring them up, we'll screen the squadron with them. And that will force these units to form square again. So see, they're trying to advance now on the square so they can form line and really shoot it to pieces. So what we have to do is get the squadron into position to force these guys into square so that it's even Stevens, and then we can screen the squadron with the skirmisher so that it's not even Stevens, so that it's in our favor. It's all about what it is. It's all about just knowing how to manipulate the rock, paper, scissors game to your advantage. So here they go. They have to form square. We don't need to charge them. Halt. Yeah, that's good enough. We'll back them up a little bit, get the skirmishers in front, and get back to business here. Yeah, that's basically all I'm doing. Playing the rock, paper, scissors game, controlling the engagement distances. That's really the secret to this game. It's just the combined arms gimmicks and controlling the engagement distances to your own advantage. It's funny because it's not really that hard to do once you know how to do it. But it took me years of playing this game to actually figure all this stuff out. All right, so now we got skirmishers out in front, screening the squadron and the square as well, even though it doesn't look like much of a screen. It is. We got one unit in line here, so we're going to need to bring this cavalry up right behind the skirmishers and see if we can force these guys into square as well. So these guys are broken. They're no longer a concern. These guys are held by the squares. Everything else is pretty secure along the line here. I'm just going to squeeze in on these battery a little bit just to make sure that the cavalry can't get through to the guns. Just controlling the distance. So 9,100 points. We've inflicted almost 4,000 casualties. God, that artillery is so good. And we've taken just under 300 casualties. Ridiculous. So we still have a bunch of squadrons we haven't even used yet. But again, I usually just use one or two squadrons placed strategically to gain the desired effect. I don't really use like massed, brigades or regiments or of cavalry like that. It's just not the best. I mean, maybe it worked that way historically. Maybe cavalry charges were much more of a thing on historical Napoleonic battlefields, but they're just not in this game. It's just not the best way to use cavalry. The best way is this: just force units into square, and then bring up units to shoot them to pieces. That's the way to do it. Okay, we've resupplied 2 of these guns, so they will unlimber and start pelting away at whatever they can. I think they had run out of canister, and that's why they fell off the line, so I brought them back up and resupplied them. So here we go. They're bringing some cavalry forward. They are again going to charge the skirmishers. We'll just they'll retreat. Bring up these skirmishers that have been resting, and so right now it's basically even Stevens. They've got cavalry in squares, we've got cavalry in squares. But they're not looking to split out skirmishers. We are, so it won't take long for us to get the advantage of this again. Again, they pull their cavalry back so they don't get shot. Whereas I don't pull my cavalry back, I just scream them. So now we'll put a skirmish unit in between these 2 squares so they can't be charged, but we got skirmishers shooting. And yeah, these guys have taken another loss. I think I lost 47 in the charge because they're not screened anymore. But it's also getting to the point where I don't have to worry about every little thing. There's only 3 minutes left in the scenario. It's pretty much all she wrote at this point. Most of the Austrian and Württemberg infantry is bottled up down here. really nothing they can do anymore. They're probably all exhausted. They're just sitting there. Nothing ever really happened on the right. So yeah, I couldn't recall these guys because they were not these guys, but the unit behind them, because they're actually a battalion that I had in skirmish formation, not a split off unit. But we'll send them over here to guard this squadron. Not that they're really getting hit, but well, whatever. There's only 1 minute left. A lot of carnage on this battlefield. Look at this hill. You really get a sense of how high this hill is like this. My lord. That's a tall hill. So here we go, guys. Wrapping it up. So, all right, we got almost 10,000 points, 9,700 points. We inflicted 3,800 casualties on the enemy, and we took just under 300 casualties. I mean, it just goes to show how really, really strong the defensive tactics are in this game. They're ridiculous. Like I said, it's just rock, paper, scissors, controlling the distance, uh, and that's the secret to the whole game, really. You can really break it down to those two things at the most basic level. It's just rock, paper, scissors, and controlling distance. It gets obviously it gets a lot more detailed than that, when you actually get into the minutia of it. But those are the two basic premises that basically boil down to how to engage the enemy in this game. Is those two things: the combined arms gimmicks and controlling the engagement distances. That's all there is to it. All right. So this was episode 3. So there are 5 scenarios. So the next 2 scenarios, whenever the hell I do them, because I've become very lazy when it comes to doing these now. So who knows when I'll do it, but I will get to it at some point. The next 2 will be the full battle scenarios for Les and Jours. One from the French side, one from the Austrian side. I think they're both about 5 hours long, so maybe I'll split it up, and that'll be like a multi-part series of videos for each battle. It would be really crazy to do one 5-hour video. Yeah, it'll be interesting to play this whole battle and see just how strong a defense I can set up as the French, and to see how quickly I can break them as the Austrians. So it'll be interesting from both sides. So I guess that's it, fellas, for this video, and I will see you guys next time whenever I start doing the full battles. Take it easy, fellas.